Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast with our cleanup hitter, finishing off the Week 5 football card, going through every single game on the card, starting with 193, 194, Boise State, Memphis, down through San Diego State and Air Force, and that would make every single game on the Week 5 card. Breaking down right here, Drew Martin and our cleanup hitter, Robbie Veno. Rob, welcome in, buddy. How you feeling?
I am good today, Drew. Another weekend. Boy, this college football season flies. I know you and I say it every year, but it seems like we just started and we're hitting Week 5 already. Significant games about to be played in conference. And some have already been played in conference schedules. So, it's that time of year where things are starting to really heat up, and hopefully we can bang a few of these late games on the card here, or back-end games on the card, and cash some tickets.
Absolutely, Rob. Let's get into it. Boise State and Memphis, guys. We get Memphis laying 3 as the home favorite, 60 being the total. So we get Mountain West here going against the AAC in the Liberty Bowl. You liking anything to start us off here, Rob?
Well, a couple of things came to mind. First of all, I think the price is fair. My power rating showed this game to be 2. It's 3, so we're right in line there pretty much. 94 degrees at kickoff time in Memphis, Tennessee. And, immediately you think, well, Boise in this kind of heat, maybe the second half gets them. But I always revert back, Drew, to that season opener in Tallahassee a few years back, maybe 2019 or the COVID year, one of those where they go to Tallahassee with a true freshman quarterback, Hank Bachmeier, who's since ended up in Louisiana Tech. They get crushed first half and come out and win the second half 17-0 against Florida State. So I don't consider weather with Boise anymore. They seem to be weatherproof after that. The scheduling situation, Memphis has a bye next week, so nothing to look ahead to. So that's pretty, since it's a non-conference game, you always wonder if there's a conference game on deck. For Boise, there is. It's San Jose State back home. This is the second straight road game for Boise, right? They're in San Diego State, thrilling win last week, 34-31, I think, in that one. I don't like anything about Memphis at this point, Drew. And I say that now, but in a couple of seconds, I'll tell you why they could probably win this game. But they could barely beat Navy. Navy's transitioning their offense with a new offensive coordinator getting out of the triple option. They couldn't cover last week in a great scheduling spot. How many people did you know that thought Memphis +7 was a live bet last week, and they couldn't get it done against Mizzou? Not only did they get it done, Mizzou played banged up and gained over 500 yards in that contest against Memphis. So it's hard. Their first 2 games of the year were cakewalks. They beat Bethune-Cookman out of the FCS. They beat Arkansas State, who has trouble playing any defense whatsoever. But these last 2 weeks, Memphis, they've given up 58 points against legitimate teams, 58 points, 250 yards per game, rushing 237 passing, 7.4 per play. And the opponent's play calling was 65.6% run and 34.4 pass. So, the last 2 weeks, they've just gotten run over, and Boise will run the football. So I have a hard time seeing Memphis, at least on the defensive side, doing much at all here against Boise. But the problem for Boise is going to be their pass defense, which, against anybody who can throw, they've been lit up. Washington lights up everybody, so I might not hold that against them, but they still got obliterated in the secondary in that game. But when you watched last week, and you and I talk enough San Diego State over the years and how you're afraid to lay any more than 7 because all they can do is run. Last week, San Diego State completed 74% of their passes and threw for 273, and Maiden hadn't proved anything at quarterback until last week against Boise. So you have an offense here in Memphis that's explosive, veteran quarterback, Seth Hannigan. It seems to me both of these teams can move the football. The price came down from 60.5 to 59.5. If I was going to play, I'd still probably lean to the over, Drew. The side is a little bit more baffling. I kind of lean Boise just because I don't like what I've seen out of Memphis yet. Memphis been a bad home favorite under Ryan Silverfield. I think 6-11 is what I have in my notes here. And Boise on the road has gone 5-2 ATS their last 7. So 31-28 doesn't get you paid here if you play over, so you need a little bit more than that. But I think you might be able to get it.
Robbie, we're heading to the Sun Belt for the next two here, 195, 196. I didn't do the normal intro. If you're new to every game on the board, we just go down in rotation order, those little numbers next to the team name. If you're new to sports betting, that's the rotation number. So if you go to the Wager Talk Live odds screen, we're just heading down the list in numerical order with the last two here, App State and UL Monroe. I'd say the last two in the Sun Belt. And we are seeing -2 touchdown favorite. That's App State as the road favorite. -13.5 at most shops, actually. 51 being the total. So we're heading to Monroe, Louisiana, and we get App State, the Mountaineers, visiting. Do you like anything here?
I'll tell you what isn't liked, and that's Appalachian State. They played 4 games, and the lines moved against them in every single game. Who are these people that hate Appalachian State? Every single time they're on the board, money comes the other way. Now, this week, the line opened 13.5, and it's held true at 13.5. Appalachian State has a bye next week. UL Monroe comes in off of a bye. A couple of notes here real quick. First of all, you have to consider Appalachian State and that loss they took at Wyoming last week. For those who didn't see it, they're winning 19-7 in the fourth quarter. Wyoming gets a touchdown middle fourth quarter. It's like 19-14. App State takes the ball, goes right back down the field, sets up for a field goal to go ahead 22-14, but instead it gets blocked with 1:52 left and run all the way back for a touchdown. Now Wyoming's winning 22-19. Appalachian State takes the ball right back down the field, get a pass interference in the end zone from the Wyoming 35. But unfortunately for them, this isn't the NFL. You don't get it on the 2, you get 15 yards. So put them on the 20 with a few seconds left and a chance to kick a field goal and tie the game. They ran a play, they got picked off, they lost the game. So that's heartbreaking. And I think situationally, maybe you would look at UL Monroe here, team coming in off a bye. But how about this out of UL Monroe? They played 3 games. They haven't thrown for 100 yards in a single game yet this year. 92 passing yards, 95 passing yards, 99 passing yards. That's terrible. Can't throw for 100 yards in modern day college football. So offensively, they're limited in what they can do. Again, there's some situationals where you could talk yourself into playing the underdog. Appalachian State played at, like 7,220 feet of altitude in Laramie, Wyoming. And now I think this place, I looked it up, Monroe, Louisiana is 72 feet above sea level. So quite a drastic change for the kids playing in this one. Terry Bowden has made a conscious decision to go run heavy. Their play calling has gone 60-40 to the run. Maybe, that's some of the reason why they haven't thrown for 100 yards, but it's probably more of an indictment on his quarterbacks. Hey, we can't throw the football. Let's just hand it off and try and stay in the game. So I could make a lot of fundamental cases why if Appalachian State came to play, they would win this game by more than 2 touchdowns. But the other stuff that surrounds it, off the bad loss, another travel spot, a team that's coming in off a bye. Maybe they put some wrinkles in this week. I don't know about. I have to lay off the game, Drew, but Appalachian State's certainly the better team.
Texas State and Southern Miss up next, guys. 7 o'clock Eastern kick here as we get the Bobcats, another road favorite in the Sun Belt, 5.5. Having to kind of a dead number here, Robbie. 61 being the total. Texas State at Southern Miss.
Yeah, there's a lot interesting going on in this one, Drew. And I'm not sure how Texas State managed to not score a single point in the first half last week against Nevada. I'm sitting there with an over 59 ticket, and Nevada's got a 17-0 halftime lead. I'm like, where's the offense, But the second half, the offense came. Texas State had 6 possessions. They scored 5 touchdowns. Their 7th possession was a victory formation, run out the clock. But the only time they didn't score in the second half, they took the ball from their own 20 into Nevada territory and fumbled. Otherwise, they probably would have scored 6 out of 6. That team under G.J. Kinney, the first-year head coach, came over from Incarnate Word with his air raid style. They're a home run waiting to happen every single play. I mean, I can't tell you how many chunk plays I watched them reel off in the second half. And Nevada's not a good defense. But we might want to question Southern Miss in this situation as well, because Southern Miss last week played Arkansas State. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because Arkansas State, Butch Jones decided to go with the true freshman quarterback in that game that Southern Miss probably got blindsided by. Dual threat quarterback who accounted for like 310 yards in that game. They lose 44-37. last week to Arkansas State. No problem with the offense. Huge rushing numbers, huge passing numbers, 449. To put that into context, Drew, they got 449 total yards last week against Arkansas State. They had only gained 460 the previous 2 weeks combined. That was against Florida State and Tulane. Through 4 games, what Southern Miss has proven basically is that they can move the ball against teams with weak defenses, but they're not going to move it against anybody who has a tough defense. And I think Texas State qualifies as a average at best, probably a little below average defense here. Their quarterback, Billy Wiles, interesting. I saw a quote out of Will Hall, their head coach. And Will Hall, we remember from Tulane, he's kind of one of these young offensive whiz kids for the last 5 years, trying to get Southern Miss on track. But he said, we've enjoyed watching him grow. He's playing at a high level. He had 2 interceptions this past week. One of them was really bad. And the other one, he got hit as he was tossing a crosser. You look up some advanced metrics, Drew, and you'll find that Billy Wiles, the quarterback for Southern Miss, he's tied with Gavin Hardison, the quarterback of UTEP, for having the most passes dropped this year by his receivers, 12 passes. So maybe if somebody hung on to the football, he'd be even better. Texas State playing at this rapid pace, 15th in the country. This is going to be an up and down game because Will Hall likes to go a little bit too. Now, what doesn't fit for him or what might not fit, if you're looking at Southern Miss, they do want to use Frank Gore Jr., probably pound the football and keep Texas State off the field. The only thing defensively Texas State has done good this year basically is defend the run. They've been pretty good at defending the run. They can't stop the pass. So that matchup might favor Texas State. And I think the last thing I'll bring up here, just to point out the significance of this matchup, the Sun Belt is still one of those conferences that remains with divisions. All these other conferences dropped their divisions, right? Pac-12, no more North-South. ACC, no more divisions. But the Sun Belt, the 2 division winners play for the championship, and this is a divisional game. It's Texas State's first Sun Belt game of the year. Southern Miss lost last week, and they're already 0-1. So there's a sense of urgency out of both sides here. I think you'll see a pretty good game. I don't know if I want to lay it because I'm not sure of Texas State's defense as of yet. But if they can handle Frank Gore Jr. a little bit, they probably will cover this one. Totals come down. I can't play Texas State any other way than over at this point in time. So if I had to make a play on a total, it would be that. But I haven't played that game at all yet.
Great breakdown, Robbie. Guys, if you have any questions, fire away in the comments below, on Twitter as well. And we do have a couple questions for this segment we'll get to in just a minute. But a reminder to give a shout out here to Viva Tequila Seltzer. Guys, if you go to vivatequilaseltzer.com, the sponsor of the show, just a quick shout out to our friends at Viva Tequila Seltzer, the ultimate go-to for toasting those winning picks with only 88 calories, 0 carbs, no sugar, 4.5% ABV. Viva, the perfect match for celebrating those victories. Viva Tequila Seltzer.com, proud sponsor of the show as we head to the Big Ten up next here, Rob. And this is one we actually got a question on. Michigan State at Iowa. Shout out to Kyle on Twitter asking about your recommendations for Michigan State coach moving forward, Rob, if you want to chime in on that. 36.5 being the total here with Iowa laying doubles. I don't know about that, Rob. Minus 12.5 here in Iowa City. Michigan State at Iowa, Big Ten matchup, Rob.
All right, let's go to Kyle real quick here because he is a loyal viewer of the show, so we want to make sure we take care of him. I put my head to it a little bit, Kyle. When I saw the question, spoke with Drew off air about it a little bit. And without doing some really in-depth research and without knowing who's going to get fired this year, off the top of my head, I can think of 2 choices that might work at Michigan State. I would look towards Syracuse, and maybe they could bring Dino Babers back to the Midwest. His style of offense is fun for kids to play nowadays. And if Syracuse continues on with the year they're having with Garrett Schrader at quarterback so far, then he would be a name that might be a commodity at the end of the season. And to top that off, he's now got Rocky Long, ex-New Mexico, ex-San Diego State defensive coordinator, kind of crowned as the inventor of the 3-3-5 defense. And perhaps if he could convince Rocky Long to come with him, that might be a good start to a coaching staff that would attract kids. They might have to do it more portal than high school, but Dino Babers, coming from Bowling Green, probably has some contacts in the Midwest where he could recruit high school kids. The other choice to go a little bit younger, I would think maybe Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. Oregon State's left without a home in the Pac-12. And, the Big Ten probably would sound better to Jonathan Smith than Mountain West with Oregon State. So you got a coach who comes from, I think it's the Chris Peterson tree at the University of Washington. And he's proven that he can be competitive in a difficult league in Corvallis where you don't get a lot of recruits. Or at least not a lot of big time recruits. You could probably get better facilities, better recruiting out of Michigan State and in East Lansing. So maybe younger guy who's coaching up, like 3 stars and putting this team on the map. Maybe that's an idea too. To get back to Iowa and Michigan State here, Drew. I don't want any piece of Michigan State right now, but as you mentioned, Iowa laying 11.5 is kind of difficult. I have to admit, I went down that rabbit hole, and I don't know if I will reach into my pocket for it, but I looked at the first half numbers, so Iowa minus 6.5, and just thought that with their defense right now, after what I've seen of Michigan State's offense the last 2 weeks, Michigan State could get shut out or held to 3 at halftime. I could see a 10-3 halftime score where you cover 6.5 as the favorite here. Iowa got 4 first downs last week against Penn State. 4 first downs. It's crazy. I don't think they had 100 total yards of offense. The offense is definitely broke. I know Kirk Ferentz doesn't want to fire his kid, but we got to do something different in Iowa City, right? So I might look Iowa first half, but certainly don't want any piece of Michigan State until they show us that they're going to play with some sort of heart here. I mean, last week against Maryland, it just seemed like Maryland let off the gas in that 39-1 bad weather win. You don't want any part of either of these teams, but if I had to, Iowa first half might be a look.
And Rob, I want to chime in on the question. Thanks, Kyle, by the way. And guys, feel free to chime in the comments, anything like that. We love questions like this. I'll throw out 3 names here, Rob. Feel free to chime in. Sean Lewis, the old Kent State head coach, who's now the offensive coordinator for Colorado. I thought that was Deion Sanders' kind of like best hire. It really helped him just kind of in the X's and O's. So I would look maybe towards Sean Lewis, kind of get that offense really rolling for Michigan State. I was also thinking Jason Candle from the MAC, the Toledo head coach. He's got that program really rolling. Pretty good recruiter. Maybe bring him into Michigan State there in East Lansing. And also a name that I remember from back in the day, and it has to do with like not giving the COVID shot. I don't know if you remember that, but Nick Rolovich.
Oh,
yeah, he was doing a great job before that happened. And I don't know how the administration there for the Spartans would want anything to do with that, but he seemed to be doing a great job until that kind of stopped his career. Now I believe he's in like the XFL. So those are 3 names that just kind of popped off in my head that could be a good hire in the Big Ten, Rob.
Yeah, and depending which route Michigan State wants to go, if they're willing to take a chance on a first-time head coach, Sean Lewis, certainly with that Kent State flash-fast offense. And now, I would say, does he really want to leave Colorado? But the difference between an OC and a head coach is a big deal. So, yes, a head coach in the Big Ten, if he were offered, I'm sure he would accept. Jason Candle's done a great job for years. It kind of like, if I could make a comp with him, kind of like Luke Fickell in their approach, I would say. Jason Candle, he's either an ex-offensive lineman or a tight end, and he always emphasizes the trenches first, so that could be a good hire. And who you surround yourself with as offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators helps as well. But yeah, those guys have all shown the ability, at least on a head coaching level. Candle and Rolovich shown the ability to win, and we'll see. Sean Lewis, I just think, could attract a lot of kids to come play for him offensively.
Sure. And then I'll throw out 2 more names, and they're not young. Like I tried to stay like around 40 years old. But I'm always a big fan of Willie Fritz at Tulane and Lance Leopold, who's now at Kansas. Those 2 guys are 2 of the better coaches. I don't think anybody really gives enough credit to, but I mean, they're getting older, but hey, they won't make as big of a splash like a name hire, but you're going to have a well-coached football team if you go with any of those guys. So hopefully that helps you, Kyle. Love the question, man. as we'll head down to the SEC up next. Old rivalry game. These two teams don't like each other, Rob. 201, 202, 6 o'clock Eastern. LSU and Ole Miss. We're seeing Go Tigers laying 2.5 as the road favorite, 68 being the total, 6 o'clock Eastern kickoff. So should be some good tailgating in the Grove before this one. You liking anything with the Tigers and the Rebels here in Oxford?
Yeah, your Go Tigers just reminded me of Ed Orgeron. I don't
Of
think
course.
Michigan State wants Ed Orgeron as head coach, though, for reasons why he was dismissed. Michigan State doesn't need that on their plate as well. LSU's becoming an offensive juggernaut, Drew. I mean, I don't know how many defenses in the country right now, as well as they're playing the pass game, the run game. Brian Kelly's got it going on there. They do seem to be able, or opponents seem to be able to move the ball on them defensively. So my first inclination here, and the total's high, was, this is probably going to be a high-scoring game. But I'm never leery of Lane Kiffin's offenses, but Lane Kiffin comes from sort of a kind of melded two spread type offenses together, but it leans more towards what Art Briles used to run. He wants to run the football, and they're not running it right now. As good as they were at doing it last year, they're just not doing it with kind of the same personnel in the backfield. So if they're forced to throw, I don't know that Jackson Dart is the better quarterback here, and I don't know that Ole Miss is the better offense. Game's going to be up and down the field. If you are betting over, you're going to get plenty of possessions. You're going to get plenty of big plays. I think one reason to play Mississippi is they lose a divisional game last week to Alabama. This is kind of a do-or-die game for them as far as winning the West is concerned. If they go to 2 losses in the West, they're not going to be in the SEC championship. And I think Ole Miss, Drew, I think that they're to that point where they're expecting to get to one of these SEC championship games under Lane Kiffin. It's not just let's go get 8-9 wins and go bowling anymore. It's, let's go, let's get there. And so I think there's a sense of urgency to that side in this game. That's why I wouldn't bet LSU, because I think that sense of urgency in college does something and creates, sometimes underdogs turn into straight up winners. But the over, if I could be guaranteed that Ole Miss could run the football halfway decently in this game, I think it gets up and over. And that Ole Miss might even be able to pull it out. I just don't think there's any stopping LSU offensively right now from what I've seen. Mississippi certainly doesn't have the goods to stop them. They would have to outscore them to win this game.
You're right. I don't think Ole Miss has ever been to the SEC championship, have they? Them and Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah, not even Hugh Freeze brought them there. So, yeah. They're looking for it for sure. I mean, I think the days of we'll be happy with our 9 wins and our New Year's Day bowl bid, but that's not cutting it anymore under Kiffin.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in Oxford as we got another SEC one here heading to the east side. Yeah, you brought up the Sun Belt having divisions. The SEC still has divisions, I believe, until next year, right? Or they still haven't actually even decided. Like they're fighting behind the scenes of like scheduling and stuff. I've heard, but we got Missouri and Vanderbilt. Mizzou minus 13.5 as the road favorite. 54.5 being the total. Vanderbilt, the biggest money burner in college football this season. I don't think they've won a point spread yet. I don't know, Rob. I've bet them a couple times, losing some money. I don't know if I can get back here, but I if you made me bet this one, I would take the 2 touchdowns at home with Vandy. Do you like anything?
Well, I don't like Vandy. I remember you and I a couple of weeks ago, Drew, and I said I like nothing about Vanderbilt right now. And I think that day they were playing Wake Forest, maybe. But I expected more out of Clark Lee, honestly. Yeah. I think when you and I were in Las Vegas, we talked about Vanderbilt, right? And I think we're both positive on what they might be able to do this year. And it just hasn't happened for them. And I don't know why, but they don't look very organized offensively, and defensively they haven't been good either. Mizzou has been somewhat of a surprise. Now, the problem in this game for Mizzou is you could be without your quarterback, Brady Cook. You could be without your top 2 receivers, including Luther Burden, who finally, and Mizzou doesn't get 5-star recruits often, but when they got him, it was a big deal. And this year he is breaking out. He looks like an NFL wide receiver. And just to linger on that point a little bit, because he's there, it's behind the scenes kind of reported that Mizzou's got 2 more kids from East St. Louis, 5-star recruit wide receivers that are going to come because Luther Burden's there. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the future in the SEC. But I wouldn't play against them right now. Defensively, they look really good. Again, they handled that situation last week, right? They came off the Kansas State win where they rushed the field, and it looked like, well, you're going to go play on a neutral in St. Louis against Memphis and lay 7? No way. And you know what? Yes way. They got over 500 yards worth of offense. So I'm worried about the injuries. If, in fact, all those guys play, they probably cover this point spread against Vanderbilt, who seems to put up a little resistance nowadays.
Next one up, we get the 49ers in the Mustangs, 7:30 Eastern, 205, 206 Charlotte at SMU here, Rob. SMU heavy favorites, seeing minus 23.5 at home, 53.5 being the total.
And I think they're probably ready to drill somebody, Drew. You know, it doesn't show in the overall statistics where SMU is concerned this year, but they're better defensively, and their talent level has gone up. Their quarterback, Preston Stone, was so highly touted and set behind Tanner Mordecai for a couple of years. And a lot of the Mustang boosters wanted Preston Stone out there, regardless of Tanner Mordecai. But now he's got his chance. But they've had somewhat of a tough schedule here. They played Oklahoma. They played TCU. They actually played them both pretty tough. And again, I'll talk about their defense because they only gave up 28 points to Oklahoma and they only gave up 34 to TCU. So it's not like they're giving up. They used to give up 45 in those games or more. So I think they're better defensively. I don't think Charlotte's very good at all. I think SMU's ready to destroy somebody much in the way that they did opening week against Louisiana Tech, who, if you want to make a comparison between Charlotte and La Tech, two CUSA teams, I think La Tech is probably even a little bit better. SMU won that one by 24 at home. They probably win this one by 24 at home.
UAB and Tulane up next. This is kicking us off on Saturday, guys. 207, 208. We get the Blazers heading to the Big Easy here in New Orleans. Willie Fritz versus Trent Dilfer, Rob. Minus 21.5. So you're going to have to lay more than 3 touchdowns if you want the Willie Fritz side of things. 58.5 being the total. Blazers at the Green Wave in the Big Easy, Robbie.
Yeah, and I've talked a little bit this week, Drew, on a couple of Wager Talk shows about still being able to capitalize on some totals that I think are misplaced. And we might not be able to get away with it much longer, but some of these teams haven't really been recognized as of yet, and perception precedes them. But I see no problem this game getting to 59 points. Willie Fritz's offense. And I know that, you know, when you say the name Willie Fritz, there's some people who still think, oh, yeah, that, you know, stodgy triple option offense. But it's just not that with Tulane anymore. They're explosive, and their quarterback's as good as there is in the country as far as collegiate quarterbacks go, Michael Pratt. And Alabama Birmingham, UAB, does not defend at all. What Trent Dilfer has brought there is he's brought a ton of tempo, and he's brought a passing game. And even last week, in a game where they were decided underdog, they scored a lot of points against Georgia, right? So they'll probably score their points here. You're asking me if this game could get to 38-21 final? I say no problem to that. I think Tulane might exceed 40 because there's going to be an extra amount of possessions because of how fast UAB plays. And Tulane, I think we've seen it, Drew, in situations where the other team will play fast, Tulane will play fast, and they can play fast very effectively on offense. So I think 58.5 is too low. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up a little bit. I did see some hair bit of a weather concern there, but probably not. The chances are minimal. So I think that you probably wind up. And I think the concern, real quick, now that I don't have notes in front of me, I'm trying to remember this. It was due to wind. Like 13 to 15 mile an hour winds. And to me, I'm not really worried about that. UAB does throw it around a lot, but if you can't throw it into a 15 mile an hour wind, then you don't belong on the field. So I'm going to say over 58.5 looks like a pretty solid play to me.
Rob, you know what? I've kind of learned that this season, because something I used to do in past seasons on is use that weather and then bet unders, like on Friday afternoon for the Saturday card. But this year particularly, they're like running the teams off very quickly. So if you're doing that, meaning like they stop the play if there's lightning around, and they're doing that a lot more. So I've almost backed off on that in my handicapping because I've like pinned an under, and then they'll run the teams off and they'll like suspend the game and then wait until the weather's good again. I've noticed that more this year. Have you?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, Drew, because I did a write-up for a game tonight, an analysis, because I used it as a play for clients where there's projected thunderstorms. Small percentage, maybe 30, 35. It was a little bit more earlier in the week. But my opening sentence was exactly what you're saying. And I think I wrote it as we all know the drill now. Don't be afraid of thunderstorms because if lightning's in the area, they stop the game until it's perfectly clear. And so there's no real concern for playing in bad weather, right? You would be more concerned if it was just rain. Oh, it's going to rain all game. But when they say thunderstorms and lightning's involved, then I don't worry about it anymore because I know, just like you said, right to the locker room, wait till the sky's perfectly clear, go back out there and play in good conditions. And that's what they do.
Yeah, something to keep in mind, guys, if you're looking to bet unders going forward. That's something I've kind of pumped the brakes on anyway. We got 209, 210, a little rivalry game here to kick us off on Saturday. Texas A&M and Arkansas. Do note, guys, this is a neutral site game. I believe they always play it at AT&T Stadium there where the Dallas Cowboys play. And we are seeing the Aggies -6, -6.5, depending where we're shopping, as the quote-unquote road favorite. 54 being the total. These two teams, Southwest Conference opponents, they've been playing each other since 1903. So they'll do it, I'm guessing like the 120th time, something around there, Rob. You liking anything? Texas A&M -6, 54 being the total.
I like the Southwest Conference. That brings back some memories, Drew. That was a great league. Maybe they should try forming that once again. You heard me talk about this yesterday, but I'm going to repeat myself because we were on a show together where I used this game. And for the audience, I'll just break this down real quick here. I was a little bit surprised that when Connor Wegman was officially announced as out for the season with that foot injury, that the money immediately ran to the board and played the game under, but didn't play against Texas A&M. I mean, it's like they figured, well, Texas A&M isn't going to score as many points because their backup quarterback's in, so we'll bet under, but we're still going to bet Texas A&M. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, the total. I think you said 54. I think you still get 53.5 out there. Backup quarterback here is Max Johnson, obviously from LSU. He's been around a little bit. He's not a rookie to the game. I would say that I think the number's a little bit too low, right? You're in perfect conditions here in Jerry World. Max Johnson had to play the entire second half last week. 6 true possessions where he led the offense, 3 touchdowns. The drives were 46 yards, 65 yards, 86 yards. He ends up 7 of 11 for $123, 2 TDs, no interceptions. If anybody's taken a look at Arkansas's defense this year, it's not good. So I think Texas A&M, with that fleet of wide receivers and with a veteran quarterback stepping right in, should be able to move the football here and score their share of points against this team. I think the fact that Texas A&M hasn't really gone out and lit up the scoreboard back-to-back weeks might have some people a little bit afraid that Texas A&M can't score. But Jimbo Fisher, and I don't know, I don't like to be too hard on anybody, but I do know where offense is concerned. I don't like to listen to Jimbo Fisher talk about offense, but he did say we have not played a full game yet. We're still waiting to play a complete game. And if they do play one here, they'll score their share. Arkansas, they allowed BYU to go crazy on them and scored 38 points. And then last week, again, they got lit up defensively. But what they can do is they can score. KJ Jefferson's almost a one-man band at this point in time, but boy, he wills that team into the end zone. Last week, 31 points. In fact, 2 weeks in a row, basically the same identical statistical results. 424 yards and 31 points against BYU, 426 yards and 31 points against LSU. So 2 really good weeks worth of defense there. And if I look at A&M and look at their schedule so far, Drew, the only real test I see that they had was Miami of Florida. And in that Miami of Florida game, they gave up 41 points. One of the touchdowns Miami scored was non-offensive. But the offense scored 41 points. A&M gave up 451 yards to the Hurricanes. And Miami only needed 54 plays to get that. They averaged 8.4 yards per play. So the jury's out on this Texas A&M defense. Yeah, they've looked good against lesser opponents, but this is an opponent that can score. I think A&M will score. the offense has picked it up for Arkansas, as I mentioned. I think it dates back to Sam Pittman, their head coach, who 3 weeks ago, after they only scored 28 against Kent State, was really disappointed. And when you look at Sam Pittman on the sidelines, he just doesn't look like a guy that can get all that angry. He's so nice of a guy. But at that point, he said, I think we'll play a much better football game against their very next opponent. No disrespect, but we'll play a much better program next week and we'll play a better game. And they have 69 and 65 points have been the totals where they've landed in the last 2 Arkansas games. And that Miami game with Texas A&M, it hit 81. So 65, 69, 81 tells me 53.5 is too small. So I think over is a good play there.
Yeah, there's some good points there. I mean, plus the fact like Texas A&M, you kind of talked about it, like quarterback Wegman getting injured, but then the lefty, their backup Johnson, I believe he's Brad Johnson's son. He looked good against Auburn, which Auburn really only plays defense, no offense. Right. So, yeah, you make a lot of good points there. We're seeing 53.5, guys, as we're talking right now as the total. And then also keep in mind it's fast track, controlled climate in the dome. So, hey, maybe look towards the over there, A&M and Arkansas. Hey, guys, thanks for chiming in live. We are going live every game on the board YouTube channels where you can check it out. Every game on the board. Also, wherever you're downloading your podcast at, and seeing DDB chiming in. Hey, as a Hawkeye fan, I say Michigan State can have Brian Ferentz.
Yeah,
like right now.
Right now is right. Pull up the limo and get him out of there, right?
Just take them away. Get them off our hands here. As we'll move down here, just a couple games left, guys. If you're liking the content, please smash the like button. Let us know where you're listening from. Any questions, fire away as well. Kansas and Texas, Big 12 conference game here, Rob. 61 being the total. Texas has looked strong this year. They're going to have to lay 16.5 at home against the well-coached Kansas team here, Robbie. Kansas knocked them off, a couple years ago. Can they do it again? Big dogs? You liking anything Jayhawks and Longhorns?
I probably will not play here, Drew, admittedly. I don't think there's anything between now and game time that could get me other than in-game to make a play on this game. But I will say this. I don't think I would lay it with Texas. The reason why I won't play is because I'm not sure of 2 things. And we're going to find out. Something's going to give here, right? How really good is Kansas's offense? Because I think Texas's defense is outstanding this year. So we'll find out how good Texas's defense is as well. That matchup, KU's offense against Texas's defense, is going to be important here. If Texas holds up, they probably do cover. They've got more than enough offensive firepower against a mediocre defense. But if Kansas's offense moves the football against Texas, this is likely to be a shootout. So I'm at a crossroads there where I can make a case for both, and I don't know the answer to either. So that's a tough place to be when you're trying to bet a game. So I won't, but I will say this again, what Lance Leipold has done at Kansas, and you mentioned his name for a potential, maybe if Michigan State's looking and if they can hire him away, he'd be a great catch. What he's done after clearing house and in such a short time, because I think he got that job midsummer when he got it. Les Miles got fired right before the season. Has been amazing. And the fact that, I would say this too, from a situational and an emotional standpoint on this game, I think Kansas will be more fired up than Texas. I don't know that Texas still thinks Kansas is in their league, but KU is out to prove points each and every week. Thus the reason why off the top, I said, if I had to, I would take the 16.5. You like the team that's going to play 60 minutes with full intensity. I'm not saying Texas won't, but I know Kansas will. And even if they have to chase, Drew, if you have 16.5, a ticket with plus 16.5, if they have to chase and say it's 38-14 with 4 minutes left, I got all the faith in the world that Kansas will still be trying to score a touchdown, and likely that they might in that situation. So they could backdoor you and get the cover here as well. So I think if you had to look, I would look Kansas, but I'm way more interested to see which one of those 2 units comes out on top here, Texas defense or the Kansas offense.
Rob, next game up, 2:13, 2:14, 7 o'clock Eastern, ECU and Rice. We are seeing the Rice Owls minus 3.5 as the short home favorite, 46.5 being the total. I believe Rice quarterback JT Daniels, he got injured. Not sure what's up with that, but ECU and Rice.
Yeah, and it's a problem, Drew, because we're not really sure of the status here. And JT Daniels, it helped me last week before the injury, but I had that game against South Florida over the total. And those two teams produced big time and got over the 58.5 number. Here we see the total come tumbling down from 51 to 46.5 based on Daniels being injured. Kind of leads me to believe that maybe he doesn't play here. And I don't know that Rice is the same offensively without him. So without wasting a lot of time on this game, I think you probably scratch this one. There's been some money toward East Carolina in this game, and it would be a really good spot for ECU to step in and take advantage. League game, potentially no number one quarterback on the other side. You could walk in and steal one. Plus a field goal with East Carolina? Maybe. But again, without knowing exactly what the deal is with Daniels, I don't want to play.
2 games left here, guys. 2 good ones, too. West Virginia and TCU, 8 o'clock Eastern primetime game here in the Big 12, Rob. -14, that's the Horned Frogs at home. 52 being the total. People were saying Neil Brown, he needs to be shown the door. Now he's got a couple wins. I'm sure. I don't know what West Virginia's thinking now, but they got a tough road game here, and they're catching 2 touchdowns. You like anything WVU and TCU?
Yeah, it's obviously somebody likes TCU, Drew, because all the money has come that way, right? I think it opened 10, 12, 12.5 now. West Virginia did get their 2 wins at home, and now they take to the road. But those were big wins. The backyard brawl with Pitt is always a slugfest, and they came out on top in pretty convincing fashion. And then to bounce right back and beat Texas Tech, which a lot of people to start the season had high hopes for. Now Texas Tech is down a starting quarterback. I think Tyler Shuck got hurt in that game. Probably doesn't play this week. But credit to West Virginia and especially the defense that lost a lot of players and good players on that side of the football. Every preseason report you read on West Virginia was defense could be down. I'll read it off to you. I mean, against Penn State, if Penn State, James Franklin doesn't stick that last touchdown in with like 6 seconds left in the game, they only give up 31 to Penn State, who we know right now is in the chase for a national championship, 6 to Pittsburgh, and 13 to Texas Tech. That's really good defense. TCU's been lighting it up, and I don't want to play against them either, Drew, because ever since day one or game one, when they played Colorado, and Sonny Dykes told us all, anybody that would listen to him, midweek before that Colorado game, we have no film. We have no idea what we're going to see on Saturday. And sure enough, they just couldn't keep pace. They gave up. But since that day, they look like TCU of last year as far as offense is concerned. So I would say, I kind of lean toward the defense here, +12, but we haven't seen West Virginia on the conference road yet. So I'm a little bit hesitant. But if I use that Penn State game as my model, they went to Happy Valley and played a really good football game in that game. So Garrett Green's proven to be pretty good at quarterback. Maybe you look to take points here, but certainly the big money has favored TCU in this game.
You know what, Rob? That was a good point with TCU. I even thought that in my head and, of course, didn't make the bets. But when they went out there, that was a real tough spot for Sonny Dykes and the crew because they didn't know what was coming for them. And a lot of people were watching, and they did not look good. And then sure enough, since then, a buy low on TCU. They've covered the 2 games since against Division I opponents, and it hasn't even been close. It's one of those things in sports betting. When that happens, you just kind of got to trust what you know in the market, right? Go just bet TCU in their next big matchup. But hey, it is what it is. So if you did that, you'd be 2-0 here. We got San Diego State and Air Force to finish it off, Robbie. We'll get a best bet from Rob Veno as well. But this will make every game on the board for week 5, guys. So if you're liking the content, do us a favor, smash the like button, comment below, follow Rob on Twitter @RobVenoSports, and go check out Viva Tequila Seltzer, vivatequilaseltzer.com. Remember, it's not just a drink, it's a statement. Embrace the vibes, own the winning mindset, and let's live it up. Viva Tequila Seltzer, raising a toast to cashing those tickets. Cheers to have those #Viva vibes. If you're going out and pre-gaming for any college football, NFL for this weekend, check out vivatequilaseltzer.com. Last game on the card here, 217, 218, San Diego State and Air Force. Man, Air Force Falcons are good, Rob. They really are. But I think San Diego State and the type of defense they play, that's the reason I'm not betting Air Force. I've been betting Air Force the last couple weeks, but I would not be surprised if they actually hold that kind of Air Force triple option is what they're running, kind of at bay here. Plus the fact Air Force has got to cover 10.5, so they got to win by doubles 43.5 being the total. If you made me bet it, I would be on Air Force, Rob, but I don't think I'm going to get there this time. Do you like anything in the Mountain West Showdown?
I think I could bet Air Force here. What scares me about San Diego State, Drew, is the fact that 2 weeks ago against Oregon State, San Diego State's defense gave up 191 yards rushing, and they lost that game by 17. And then they came back last week and outdid themselves. They gave up 241 yards rushing to Boise State. 191 and 241 on the ground back-to-back, and now you're going to play Air Force, who, like you say, boy, they look good. I mean, every play they run looks like it was drawn up on the chalkboard the same way. It looks the same way on the field. So I would think that if you have rush defense problems and you're going to play Air Force, you're not going to be in the game very long. And I have to wait and see. But the one thing that would hold me back a little bit is what I saw out of the San Diego State passing game last week. We mentioned it earlier when we talked about Boise. But the fact that their quarterback, Jalen Maiden, hadn't shown anything whatsoever the first 3 weeks, and then goes out and has a terrific game against Boise, 273 yards passing, 74% completions, leads me to believe that maybe something clicked with him. Mm-hmm. That's an important game, Mountain West against Boise. That's not a pushover, and he did very, very well in that one. But you know what? Air Force's defense has been, like a Ziploc bag, just shut people down. So I would have to play Air Force if I was going to play it all. And surprisingly, when we talked earlier in the year about how will these clock changes to college football change the game, Air Force uses limited possessions. Air Force uses all the clock, and somehow they end up around 40 points all the time. So they're doing the job right now. They're not adverse to covering 11.5, even with their style of offense.
Rob, I wanted to bring up one more point about San Diego State. They played a tough schedule. Like, you bring up the Boise State team, and that's a good point. Boise State was able to run the football. I always struggle with how does that translate to stopping the triple option. Like, I don't know how correlated it is. It likely is, though. But they played Boise State, Oregon State, UCLA, like their last 3 games. So, like, caliber of athlete level, they might, like, kind of look good. But I don't know. This is a tough game, man. And Air Force's quarterback's really good. That's one thing I've noticed as well. So something to watch here, guys. I'm not going against Air Force. Let's just put it that way. But, guys, Rob Veno breaking it down each and every week here on the Every Game on the Board. Our closer, fan favorite here, Robbie. People in the chat box always loving you, man. On Twitter as well, at Rob Veno Sports. You can check out his premium plays, guys, at wagertalk.com, Rob Veno. But, Robbie, throw it over to you, man. Any final thoughts here before we shut it down? And you got a best bet for the listeners?
Yeah, and I think it's important at the end of every show, Drew, that we do thank the listeners, because this show's been running for a long, long time. And every year when it comes up, every game on the board, when we're in the end of summer, hey, we're gonna get every game on the board going again, because we know that the people like it. And glad to do it for everybody. Glad you're in the chat with us, and hopefully even more weeks to come. I would say this, Drew, without repeating the analysis, I think that the Texas A&M Arkansas game is just priced too low at 53.5, 54. And you even reiterated the fact that it's in great conditions in AT&T Stadium. It is an early morning game. It's an 11 o'clock Central start. But these two teams, they'll be, bed check. You won't find guys wandering around town when this matchup is going to happen. Everybody's going to be getting ready for the game. So I think Max Johnson can do the job. I think KJ Jefferson can do the job. I question both defenses at this point in time for reasons I stated. So let's go over 53.5. If you can get it, I think it's still available, but we can use 54 for the show. I think it'll clear that fairly easily.
No stale lines. It's 53.5. We got Bet Online 53.5, DraftKings 53.5, Caesars 53.5. So, guys, you can find a 53.5 out there, and that will be Rob Veno's best bet. Texas A&M Arkansas over 53.5. Thanks to Viva Tequila Seltzer. Thanks to Rob Veno, and thanks to all you listeners. Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're downloading your podcast at. Every Game on the Board. Twitter as well, at Rob Veno Sports, at Drew Martin Bets. Give us a like, comment below, guys. Let us know where you're listening from, what you're looking to bet, where you agree, where you disagree. All is welcome. So huge thanks to you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We will be back next week. Enjoy the weekend and cash those tickets.